Yo, boys, welcome back. We're at it again after a brief vacation. I think the spine of this podcast, Pratik, you always have a way of sneaking some things in because you are actually a very sneaky guy. You're my little sneaky Pratiki. But I think the thrust of this podcast is going to be like the three horsemen of the Republican apocalypse who are sort of setting the news right now. Of course, Donald Trump, presidential announcement, Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy trying to consolidate power in their own conferences. By the way, boys, it's a conference if it's the Republicans, it's a caucus if they're Democrats. Don't keep fucking that up. PJ, get me centered, get me grounded. Are we supposed to be talking about anything else?
I mean, look, I think for those of us who are on predicted, which I think is most of our audience, the number of markets is dwindling every day. So yeah, I mean, I think the speaker market, I think the presidential race are kind of the big things on the horizon right now.
That's right. That's right. We did deem it a new dark age for political gambling. So here we are, sort of rumbling around in the closet in this new dark age.
And as if things weren't dark enough, we learned this week that among other things on Sam Bankman-Fried's sketchy balance sheet was bets on Trump. Did you
wait.
catch that?
Is that actually true?
Yes.
So somewhere the FTX founder who evaporated $16 billion of money, part of that money evaporation was degen shares on Trump winning.
Um, was it winning or losing? I think he was shorting. Well, okay, here
Oh,
it is.
okay.
FTX's Trump lose token,
Wait,
which is part of FTX's prediction market.
Okay, all right.
Anyway,
Trump.
the point is like if the odds were looking bad for political prediction before this, I imagine it doesn't help that the first introduction to political betting for all kinds of people on the Hill is going to be Sam Bankman-Fried's sketchy token.
Truly, we're about to be the people who have labored for all these years to build the Egyptian pyramids, and now the regulators are going to like seal us in with the emperor and like let us rot next to his birds and cattle and stuff like that after doing this. It's very grim. Okay, well, can we let's talk about Trump's announcement. You got me into a really shitty bet on this that I lost some money on. I don't know why I listened to you when you said that he's not going to announce, even though he said he's going to announce. So I will be sending you a Venmo request for whatever, like $75 I followed you on.
When did I say that?
Oh, I thought you said that he wasn't going to file the paper. I thought you were like, oh, Trump's going to like say he's going to run for president, but he's not going to file the paperwork for a while because, he's greedy and can't do shit with his money or something like that.
Oh, I mean, we'll have to check the archive. I was pretty sure he wouldn't announce before the midterms, but I think it's Domer who was going around making the side bets that the announcement wouldn't happen.
Okay, well, whatever. I'm not accountable for my actions. That's the point I want to make here. All of my good bets are my ideas. All of my bad bets are other people's ideas. So I did just admit to making the stupidest bet of the year, but I'm trying to say that's your fault. So can you just make me feel better?
Well, either way, it is in fact true that you're not responsible for your own actions.
Wait, is that your version of trolling?
Um, I don't know. I mean, isn't that the thing, right? In political gambling, when you lose money, you say that it was the right bet anyway because expected value.
Right. I've heard about this.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So Trump announces he's running for president and files the paperwork and posts the paperwork on Instagram, or at least Don Jr. did. So not my fault, your fault, but also my fault. I have one big takeaway from this that's maybe exterior to betting, and then we can work our way back into betting. I think this is going to be just an absolute just booming market. Like, think about all the fact checkers who were laid off from like CNN and Vox.com in the last couple of years. All these fact checkers are back in business. I mean, I was just listening to Trump's announcement speech. I can't wait to read the article about like, was Joe Biden really asleep at that meeting? Can nukes destroy the country in one shot? Fact check. Was it a ridiculously long wait for the votes in Arizona to be counted? Two Pinocchios. Like, these people are back, don't you think?
I mean, this is the thing. Like, this is a pretty big deal when you think about it. Like a former president coming back. now basically what, a week after the midterms, announcing for president. Like, this is objectively a pretty big story, and yet you can just kind of hear the collective eye rolls, right? Like, people are already kind of bored about talking about this.
Yeah, yeah. I'm fully one of those people who just thinks that the attention span of consumers, like they can only watch so many seasons of Game of Thrones before they just decide that they hate Game of Thrones. And I think it's the same with Trump. Like I think you can only like we talked about this when Cassidy Hutchinson turned on him at the January 6th committee, where it's just like I think people are just kind of tired of this guy. I'm one of those people who expects a competitive primary. I'll say that.
Yeah, I was gonna tweet this and I didn't, but I'll say it here. It's like there's this phenomenon in American politics where you fight like hell in a primary, right? But then if you can make it out of the primary, basically overnight you get a cult following of like somewhere between 25 and 40% of the country. And then when you get elected president, now you really have a cult following and your numbers just kind of don't really drop below a certain point. And then you have this phenomenon where when you're a failed presidency, well after the point where it's obvious that you failed, something really like a bunch of big things happen that cause you to be a failed president. But then it's like that something small thing happens where all of a sudden it becomes okay for people in your own party to trash you. So like in the George W. Bush era, right? It wasn't Iraq and all of that stuff. It was like heck of a job, Brownie. To me, that was like kind of the moment where it became okay for Republicans to turn on him. And I think Trump, after January 6th, impeachment, all of that stuff, I think it's actually this midterm defeat in combination with the premature announcement that I think you can see the page turning on Republican support. So he has a base of support, but I don't see this next presidential run going well for him.
Well, okay, so but the obvious question that I will ask here and that everyone on every hacky political media podium anywhere is asking is, okay, so big shot Republican donors on Wall Street and big shots in Washington, D.C., silver foxes, et cetera, they're all saying that, they're not backing Trump again. He's done. That was never why Trump was successful. Trump was successful because random people at Walmart who had never voted before wanted to go out and vote for him. So the question is, will the random people at Walmart still, supply him his votes? Like, has the game really changed that much? I guess I would argue that yes, it has, after all that Cassidy Hutchinson bad metaphor that I just made. But I think it is an important question to ask. Like, at the end of the day, who gives a shit what Rick Scott thinks of him?
Well, look, I think you can make a reasonable argument that very early on, Trump sort of became a viable candidate on the basis of grassroots support. But I think that when you're trying to understand how Trump stayed as powerful and popular as he did, and why he was able to hold on power and actually come pretty close to getting reelected, I think it's precisely the Republican establishment and Republican elites that were key in his maintaining support.
Are you just saying this to be a contrarian? Like, do you actually this is actually what you think?
Yeah, I do. I think that when you're, and I think that this, I don't know if Trump sort of did this on purpose or is inadvertent, but imagine the counterfactual where Trump gets elected president and he really throws the Republican establishment under the bus. Like, he doesn't give them the plum jobs in the White House and the agencies they want. He doesn't kind of basically allow Hill.
Isn't that exactly what he did though? Like, didn't he literally do that? Yeah,
he did. And so I'm saying, like, I think that is kind of to argue that he doesn't need the Republican establishment, or that he can continue to carry on as a politician without Republican establishment support. I think those days are over. I think it's like a symbiotic relationship.
I mean, I don't know. As we've said, I've been in Washington for a couple months. One of the persistent gripes that I hear in Washington is no Republicans can raise money without Trump's name, and that he just hoards it all. So I just think, I guess this is sort of where we started, that presidents are kind of independent brands with their independent destinies. I don't think Trump really needs the Republican Party, but they're definitely a nice to have. I guess it's a question of who gets in to run against him, which is I guess I'll use that to jump off and say I have not bought any Ron DeSantis shares because they're really expensive. I have bought Donald Trump shorts, and I think I owe like penny stocks of basically everyone else. I mean, I'm just hoping that some of these people are going to get into this race, but yeah, I'm not really going to make any bold pronouncements yet.
Yes. Okay. So I think it's actually worth getting into that. I mean,
Yeah.
from a betting standpoint, I think it kind of depends where you're betting. So if you're making like a side bet or something where you're locked in, you have to think seriously about Trump's future. But in the context of prediction markets, I mean, okay, you look on Predict It right now, Trump to get the Republican nomination, 36%. Now we're in November of 2022. I mean, think about all the things that are going to happen between now and when the first vote is cast in a primary.
Yeah.
I mean, just like Trump getting indicted, right, is a pretty significant milestone that I would think probably drops the price.
Or
he's also
some
like
idiots on this site would probably use it as an excuse to pump the price. They just made him a martyr. Like, let's fucking go, boys.
Yeah. Anyway, I just think there's such a long time from now. There's so much that can go wrong. I'm going to say just keep buying nose on Trump. Be patient. I think you get your money back.
So I guess the genius play, I'm just looking at the markets now, the genius play was to short Donald Trump in the who will win the 2024 U.S. presidential election. That seems to be the one place where his values are really taking a beating. But below, hilariously, Joe Biden, for the first time I can remember, is a favorite over Donald Trump to win the next presidential election. So go figure. But here we are.
Yeah. Now, in terms of DeSantis, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, he is expensive right now, but at the same time, if you think an indictment of Trump is coming, if you think that, we're going to see a meltdown of Trump, I definitely agree on buying lottos. I mean, you can get a lot of these people pretty cheap who we know are running. I mean, for example, Pompeo has made it pretty clear he's running. Pence, Youngkin, I think you can kind of take it in the bag at least that they're going to run. So I think those kinds of lottos are very respectable plays. But even DeSantis, I mean, if the Republican Party really kind of rallies behind him and he goes in as a prohibitive front runner, it's kind of hard to believe when you use 2016, 2012, 2008 as baselines. But before then, I mean, the Republican Party does have a long track record of just kind of anointing an early front runner and letting them ride to the nomination. So, it wouldn't surprise me if DeSantis just kind of becomes the prohibitive favorite and it stays that way for 2 years.
Yeah. Okay, so let's close this segment out. Do you want to just tell me who you've got penny stocks on? I'll read you my list. Maybe we can trade. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have penny stocks on. My favorite is Rick Scott because I think his ego is just boundless. I got my 2-cent shares there. I got Kristi Noem, a little too expensive. I've got her at 4 cents. Tim Scott at 3 cents. Mike Pompeo. Definitely overpaid like a motherfucker for my Mike Pompeo's. Must have bought him right when he announced his weight loss. I got him at 5 cents. I got Nikki Haley at 5 cents too. I got Mike Pence at 6 cents. Am I going to get my money back, bro? Oh, and I got Donald Trump shorts because fuck that guy.
So I think I'm taking a bit of a different approach here. In the case of Nikki Haley, right now she's trading at 4%. The reason, even at that price, I'm inclined for now to take shorts on her, like ideally, I would get them at 95%, is because she said that she wouldn't run against Trump. Now, who knows if she'll actually keep that promise or not, but there's a chance that she might just bow out. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for there. But in terms of the others, I mean, Mike Pence, I have bid orders in at 3 or 4%. I think he's running, and I think that people are underestimating him. Pompeo, I have bid orders at 2%. Scott at 2 to 3%, I think is attractive because I think he's going to be in the conversation for VP, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And actually, the one that I mean, this is really a degenerate play, but Ted Cruz at 2%. I'm not convinced he's running, but I'm willing to take it at that price. And then I'm also actually interested in 1% Tom Cotton shares because I think that he's going to be in the mix for VP. So
Oh, interesting. What about
assuming
I heard
that
Larry Hogan was talking about maybe getting on the presidential weight loss plan sometime soon too.
yeah, I've heard he's running. The problem is, do you even want to pay 2% for him? I don't know. Could argue
Yeah.
that both ways.
Great question, bro.
But yeah, but I mean, look, the key thing here is obviously, apply this analysis to poly market, no problem. But with predicted, we have no idea if these markets even are going to be around after February 15th. So there is a risk here.
Right. Well, I'll put a bow on it and just say, I feel like all of these people, if they get in the race, on their best day, they're worth, 6 cents, worst case scenario, 6-7 cents. So definitely don't buy 6-cent Mike Pence or Mike Pompeo shares. But decent chance to get your money back if they get in. So why not take a flyer? And could be worth much more than that, much more than that if a couple things go their way.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's I want to talk about Mitch McConnell for a second. I don't know how much time we need to talk about him. I can Pratik, I can quote from my New York Times subscription to do this. Actually, is that I'm kind of excited about that. What do you think?
Yeah, how does it feel to be a subscriber
To the New York Times?
Yeah.
Well, I'm obviously a little bit conflicted about it. I've spent a lot of my life hating the New York Times. I honestly think it's part of my self-improvement plan. So I missed on Nevada where I really shouldn't have on this election. And I think I missed somewhere else. I had 2 misses and I was pretty happy with my results in the other races. Anyway, the point is that I guess I kind of realized I needed to understand the mind of, the lib a little bit better. And I thought about going to Aspen or Davos for the winter, but I can't afford that. And I thought about adopting a cat, but I'm allergic to them. So really the cheapest alternative was just to subscribe to the New York Times and just understand how Democrats think. So that's sort of my cover story.
At least a certain type of Democrat, right?
Is there another type? I feel like between cats and Davos, what am I forgetting?
I'm imagining in my head iSavage being here and reminding us that not all Democrats are soy boys and actually they're rugged union guys.
That's true. Southside Chicago represent.
Yeah.
No, but New York Times on sale for $1. That's a fucking buy, bro. We're traders. $1 a week, I'll buy that. Mitch McConnell.
I will say, just close that out. I mean, for all that conservatives bitch about left-wing elite media, whatever, I mean, let's be honest, there's not even one right-wing alternative that does even halfway serious reporting.
Yeah. I'm not even going to touch that one, but yeah. I mean, right-wing media usually reads a lot more like state media. Left-wing media, they care about the arts and bronze busts and fucking veal steaks and shit. So go New York Times. All right, New York Times, quoting from Wednesday, I think. Quote, Mitch McConnell of Kentucky was reelected overwhelmingly as his party's Senate leader on Wednesday, holding off Senator Rick Scott of Florida in the first challenge Mr. McConnell has faced since assuming the post in 2007. Final tally, 37-10. Some gossip about who voted against him. I think, Pratik, I didn't think of this until now, but isn't there a market over on Insight Prediction on whether or not McConnell can keep this job through the entirety of the next Congress? I think there's a who will be the GOP leader in 2024 or something bet. Am I making that up?
Yeah, I mean, I can check on that, but
I'll check on it. But what, I mean, what do you think?
I've been more focused on the whole Kevin McCarthy situation, which we'll get into. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. So who will be the Senate Majority Leader on February 1st, 2023? Oh, okay, that's coming up. Fuck that. Yeah, no. What is there to say about this other than I feel like these sort of leadership pushes take a couple tries. And I think this does sort of set a clock to Mitch McConnell's ability to control the Republican conference, which isn't an indictment, but it's just worth noting, right?
I guess. I mean, you know more about the Hill than I do, but basically, isn't it going to be the House that's setting the agenda, or basically it's going to be like constant fighting between Long Island Republicans and the Freedom Caucus?
Some of that, yeah, but I mean, if you remember the Obama era, basically like John Boehner and Paul Ryan in the House just like fucked everything up, tossed hand grenades into every bowl of soup, and Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden just had to kind of figure out how to run the country in the meantime. So I would think with Kevin McCarthy kind of being hard up over in the House, that McConnell's probably going to have to play a pretty important role again to sort of sort out what's doable and what's just Fox News press releases.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought too much about the legislative calendar for next year, but I think you made the point before. I mean, some of that may not even be worth thinking about. It may just be the news cycle that determines the agenda, things like crypto bill and the like. Um, but it's really this House Republican speaker market that I'm interested in. I mean, we covered this in some detail last time, but I've been pretty surprised the extent to which traders, I mean, even smart traders who I respect, have been very shy about getting into this market on McCarthy. I understand 218 votes is going to require some bargaining and so forth, but I think McCarthy is pretty safe. And I mean, since we last spoke, it's jumped from the 60s, now trading, as of right now, 87%. So that was a nice return if you followed us. But I still think that, barring some major personal scandal, I mean, I think this one's more or less in the bag.
Yeah, I don't really get, like, I get why people have their sense of disbelief, but who's running against him? I mean, random dude Andy Biggs, he's not going to be the Speaker of the House. I feel like Jim Jordan is kind of the right wing wet dream, but Jim Jordan's about to be the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He probably knows if and when McCarthy blows it, he's next in line. I can't find any reference to Jim Jordan as anything other than a McCarthy ally. Like, I feel like the crazies are in like a death pact with McCarthy, and they're going to give him enough rope to hang himself if he can't do the job, and then they'll have their day. But I don't think this is going to be an eventful leadership contest.
I mean, one theory that was floated by someone in our Discord, I won't dox him, but he's kind of reluctant to get in on the theory that Steve Scalise might stab McCarthy in the back. I don't know. I mean, I just haven't seen any evidence whatsoever for that.
Steve Scalise is like the nicest person on the planet. Like I feel like he's on his worst day, Steve Scalise is like a stab you in the face, not stab you in the back guy.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if something goes wrong with McCarthy, I'm gonna look really dumb, but this strikes me as one of the safest plays I've seen. I think there will be drama, there will be hard bargaining, there will be, press cycles where things look bad. I just sort of think this is an eventuality. I'm happy to take McCarthy in the mid 80s.
Yeah. I think this one's in the bag. So go McCarthy. Daddy wants his money back, especially after doing what Pratik told him to do, but didn't really tell me to do on Donald Trump. What else do you have on the ledger? I was going to talk trash about Elon Musk for a second, but I don't think that's part of our mission.
Oh yeah, go for it.
One of the things I really like about Elon Musk is he just does a perfect job of bridging the divide between boomers and millennials and Gen X. And I just loved hearing that he said, quote, to build a breakthrough Twitter 2.0 and succeed, we will need to be extremely hardcore. There's nothing I love more than hearing an aging CEO tell people they need to be extremely hardcore. And I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. I hope you are being extremely hardcore today, Pratik. I actually don't know if we're fulfilling this minimum standard, but I just have so much confidence in anyone whose marching instructions is be extremely hardcore. Can we bet on that somewhere?
Well, does it tell you anything about whether Elon Musk will father another child? Because you can bet on that one on Inside Prediction.
I mean, hardcore to me equals alpha male. Alpha male equals smashing a lot of hot babes. I think that's in the bag. What's the resolution date on fathering a new child?
August 2nd, 2023.
I mean, I don't know,
The
dude.
yes
That's
is trading at 33%.
okay. So, but like, walk that back. So, August of 2023 means he needs to be getting people pregnant like right now. So, I think maybe Elon's a little too busy. He doesn't strike me as a go to the club and bang random biddies kind of guy when he's stressed out. He strikes me as a sleep on the SpaceX floor and do nothing but work kind of stressed out guy. So, I think we're going to need to see Twitter, getting some positive press, maybe hiring a new CEO. I think around then maybe Elon's getting up in some stuff, but I think that's an easy no if the resolution date is August 2023.
There are some really crazy Elon Musk lines on manifold markets. So if you are obsessed with Elon Musk, I would check that out. On this should we keep going on this Elon reproduction thing?
I anytime that you're talking about someone's dick, I want to listen. So let's go.
Okay, so I have always actually been somewhat skeptical about this notion that extremely wealthy men, in fact, have a massive advantage with women. Right, which is to say, I've always actually envisioned it as being more of like a bell curve kind of deal. Like, you obviously don't want to be totally poor, although even that we can sort of debate, right? And then, like, as you go up the ladder, yeah, your options probably improve. But like, at a certain point, I mean, if you're extremely wealthy and famous and busy, like, doesn't that kind of backfire, right? I mean, if you're Elon Musk or whatever, and you have like the cameras on you all the time, you have to worry about everyone in the world, every intelligence service hacking your email, right? Like, you can't just go hit on your colleagues or whatever. I mean, I actually think there are probably significant transaction costs to a guy like Elon Musk actually fathering another kid.
I was actually hoping that your rationale there was going to be that when you were poor, like you were getting on more stuff than Gingham, back in like 2010, that you were just smashing everything. So that this is not empirical advice. You weren't actually getting laid a lot when you were poor.
I can promise you I'm not a billionaire, so I don't know if I can provide an edge in the Elon Musk market. That's what you're getting at.
I don't know. I mean, different people care about different status symbols. Maybe Elon cares about babies.
Yeah, I don't know.
He zips it up. He being Pratik, but maybe not Elon. Do you have anything else? Because I'm just prattling on here, and there's nothing worse than a podcast where people prattle on.
Do you have any reflections on the midterms? We never quite did that.
Yes, I do, and they're going to get me in trouble with our users. So should I go on?
Yeah, of course.
So, so I feel like I've been like very effusive in my desire to compliment the intelligence of our community and its character, and I do really mean that. I do, like, Pratik and I were talking offline, and I was like, man, on election day, I wasn't even thinking about my bets. Like, I was just so excited. I feel like Star Spangled Gamblers, kind of as an appendage of this community, has produced just such a great body of work about American politics. Like, I felt like we were presenting kind of our master thesis or something like that. So I say that to like fluff everyone up before I reflect in a less optimistic way. I feel like on some level, it's not a coincidence that in 2020, Zoltar wins, thousands and thousands of dollars betting on Trump and like the MAGA wave. And then in 2022, like a lot of the people who are sort of like the most well-known kind of hard left political bettors have a huge night too. Like, there's some element of people just falling back on their bias and sometimes getting blown out when they do that, and sometimes making a ton of money when they do that. And I feel like we should just kind of acknowledge that without like throwing shade. Like, is this not uncouth of me to say?
No, look, I totally agree. I mean, I got a call today from some reporter basically asking me like, how did markets fare in the midterms and all that, and I never know, because when on the rare occasion that a reporter actually wants to cover what we're doing, like, of course I have every incentive to play up prediction markets and how smart our community is and all that. But I mean, I would actually say even more than the 2016 cycle where, yes, the markets didn't think Trump would win, but they actually did have the odds higher than a lot of models and pollsters. I mean, this 2022 midterms, let's just face it, like the markets did really badly. I mean, the prices were terrible compared to how the Democrats did. And it wasn't even like you could say, oh, well, the markets were right, but the underdog just won. I mean, there was just absolutely no excuse whatsoever for the markets to be trading where they were on like Republicans winning 55 seats in the Senate. And the reality is, I mean, it's not just the markets that did poorly, but I think at this point we've been doing this podcast long enough that we certainly don't know every good trader in the world. Maybe we don't even know most of them, but we know enough that like we get kind of really high quality contributions over the years, over the year coming on our show. And the reality is that exactly what you said, right? I mean, why is it that those who are most on the red wave train also tend to be Republican, conservative? Those who really kind of buck the trend tend also to be Democrats and whatever. I just sort of think the reality is, are there people in our community making lots of money doing this and beating the markets? Yes, of course. But the reality is that even like the best traders among us, we're just kind of not that good. Like there are real limits on how much we can control our own biases. The wisdom of the crowds thesis, I think, is very imperfect at best. So, this reporter today kind of asked me, well, after we discussed how badly the markets did, he was like, well, do you think the answer is just that the markets need more liquidity and then they do better? And what I told him is that, look, like, yeah, it might help if there are less regulations and more liquidity and more education and all that. But really, there's a fundamental ingredient which no one talks about, which is that big, like, whale traders themselves just have to get better at this. Right. I mean, that's how you get better pricing and better odds. And it will happen, right? I mean, this is a new game. Most of the people here are just getting started. So, much like tennis players or chess players or cello players or whatever today are way better than the best ones in the 70s. I think the same thing is going to happen with political gamblers. But I just think as a community, we have a long way to go.
Yeah. So as you say that, I'm like thinking about this was my third election cycle, and I think about how different each one was, and like I don't know if I've really cracked it yet. I mean, the first election cycle, I don't think I knew anyone doing this. I was just randomly researching and betting. Who knows why? The 2020 cycle, I feel like you and I were making like shitty models. Like shitty turnout models and stuff like that for random states we don't care about. And then the whole site crashed, so it didn't really matter. And then this election cycle, I feel like I played it almost the way like a defensive back or a linebacker would play a football game, where I was just trying to kind of like read the eyes of the offense. And by that, I mean, like, instead of trying to get really, really, really smart about certain counties and precincts and swing states, I was trying to get like really smart about traders and like who was a reliable source of information in this state or in this type of race or in that type of election. And on that count, I feel like that was a pretty successful way to bet, was to just sort of understand the marketplace and the people in it and like make decisions based on how the market was making decisions. My only problem was I sort of started with some positions that just weren't good. I started with 65-cent Laxalt shares, and whoops.
No, I mean, I'm pretty embarrassed to admit this, although I came out ahead. I mean, the bet where I put the most amount of money in and where I was the most confident was Republicans taking the House. Now, thankfully, it paid, but some of the prices I paid before the election, I think you have to probably admit it was actually the wrong trade, given how close it was. But yeah, I mean, to your point, part of the reason I was able to come out ahead is because in many ways, actually, after the election, when people were really panicking and the markets dipped, I kind of had, over the last few years, built up enough of connections and just people on Twitter. I knew who to follow. I knew what to track. And I really felt for the first time, like after the election, when the markets were swinging, unlike the last few cycles, I really felt like I was kind of in the community of people who really knew what was going on and knew where to place money and so forth. So, in that sense, I mean, I certainly felt like I improved as a trader, if only because our community just has become more coherent and we're better at sharing information. So
Shout out
you
Star
know,
Spangled Gamblers.
yeah. But
I,
yeah, no,
so
go ahead.
yeah. Like I felt like there was just some really obvious questions that not many people bothered to ask. Like one of the obvious questions that actually was like existing in my head, which is who said that this was going to be a blowout on the House side? Because I don't think many traders were really doing serious analysis on house races because there were no, like, Predicted didn't have any bets on house races. Polymarket didn't have any bets on house races. So I feel like the community just didn't really do a lot of research on what people just assumed to be true because there just wasn't an incentive to. And I think that really permeated the market because if people had looked into those house races and seen, what they would have seen, probably those Senate odds would have been different too.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of people like Zubby Badger I've mentioned. Peter Wilderford also had put it at 30%. I think Sharko Rubio also had placed some bets on Democrats on the House. It wasn't like no one was doing this work, but I agree. I mean, maybe if like there had been markets on some of these close districts, maybe we would have gotten a little bit more research. But then the counter argument is Predicted did have a market on the number of governorships that the Republicans would win, and the B max bracket, which I'm forgetting now, I think it was 32 or more.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, I mean that was trading very high right up until the end, and I'm forgetting now, but I think it ended up being what 28 or something that Republicans won, which I think was trading in the single digits. Or no, here I'm pulling it up. 26 ended up winning, which was trading not even close to being the favorite bracket. So I just kind of think the markets, the crowds, even good traders really got carried away with the red wave thesis.
Oh, yeah, I think we said this before in Star Spangled Gamblers, but I think bettors are victims to the same thing that sometimes journalists are, where they get really hooked on a story that they're like, oh, I'm going to be like the first one to, discover this candidate or discover this story. Except it's worse when you put $500 up against a shitty thesis that, it turns out the market was right. Or the haters were right.
As much as I hate doing it, there's probably one other person we have to begrudgingly acknowledge, right?
Oh, who?
Nate Silver.
Oh, well, I've said with all of my honor on the line at the beginning of this election season that we were going to be a pro Nate Silver podcast. Did you not get that edict?
So I've never actually really had a strong opinion on the guy, but I know a lot of people in our community really hate him.
Yeah, but people hate the New York Yankees and the United States of America and Duke basketball. Like, they hate him for a reason.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to weigh in except to say that Nate Silver's model looked a lot better than the markets.
Yeah, well, Nate Silver, we will still continue to troll you. We'll make bald jokes. We'll call you things like Nate sodium tricopper glyceride, but we're only hating on you because we respect you. We would not take the time to hate on people that we don't respect. So we are pro Nate Silver podcast. We're going to stay that way, and you better fucking shape up or ship out about that critique.
Yeah, no. Well, I'll say Silver and Logan Phillips again. He's a pretty open Democrat. Maybe he got lucky, but he has had a number of really good cycles, absolutely killed it this time. So follow him as well.
Yeah. Shout out Logan Phillips. Pratik, I'm going to end this podcast unless you want to ask me or maybe spend some more time talking about people's reproducing habits and their wieners and stuff, because I thought that was just, what the boys have been wanting.
If there are more markets, we can get into that.
Okay. All right. Someone find some dick markets. We're going to get Pratik into those. Okay. All right. Well, then that's it for now. We are a always enthused Star Spangled Gamblers podcast. We're also a lazier Star Spangled Gamblers podcast 1 week after the election, but we're not going anywhere. Pratik has a beard, and I'm going to hang it up. So thanks for sticking with us, and we'll be back soon.